most of you have seen Uncle Tom, the movie that was produced by Chad Jackson and Larry Elder and others, and it was powerful and important. Well, Chad has now come back and produced a part 2. Let's take a look at the trailer.
Many of our people's minds have been whitewashed. If a Negro comes up to you and you turn your back on him, he's got to run to the hunky. We're going to take time and patience with our people because they're ours. All of the Uncle Toms, we're going to sit down and we're going to talk. And when they slap, we're going to bow. And we're going to try to bring them home. And if they don't come home, we're going to off them. That's all.
How are you?
Great, thank you.
What we're covering is a very layered thing. We're talking about over a century of tactics, writings, education, journalism, music, film. All these different vehicles being used to carry out this ideology.
All right, joining me on the program is the producer of Uncle Tom 2, Chad Jackson. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Look, these movies are extremely powerful, but at the same time, they also seem to be outright rejected by organizations like the NAACP, the Urban League, the Congressional Black Caucus, and academia at large. It's a rhetorical question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Why?
Well, the obvious reason is that they know that when they reject a film like this, it invalidates it in a sense, at least as far as the general public is concerned. But, you know, as Stalin, the communist, once said, if I can take your history, and I can take your country. And that, unfortunately, exactly what happened with the black. That's exactly what happened with the black community, where our history is shaped by just outright Marxists. And along comes Uncle Tom 2, and it offers a different narrative than what is continually being peddled to not only Black America, but America at large.
By the way, I use the same alarm tone as well. Do you think, we talked about this on my radio show, that Karl Marx, after the Civil War and during Reconstruction, was outraged that Black Americans had become Republicans and capitalists? Do you think that's why the Marxists sought to basically convert black people?
Yeah, that's absolutely right. The fact of the matter is that to the extent that individuals are self-sufficient and productive, and they rely upon their own means to make their way in life, they don't need any kind of organization, be it a Marxist organization or any other one for that matter. Our founding fathers knew what the heck they were doing when they set forth the greatest country in the world that anybody from any ethnic background can come and make it here. And so to the extent that you had these blacks who were coming out of slavery, who are utilizing the tools for success in a country like America, Karl Marx and his faction didn't necessarily like that, because they want people to rely upon their ideology, to rely upon their movement, because what they have in mind is a government that's ruled by the so-called proletariat.
Within the left wing, I will just call it the black left, I guess, the pejorative Uncle Tom is levied at anyone who wants the same thing. And when I say this, I believe we all want the same thing, but they'll say, oh, that's what white people want, right? Like a suburban home or whatever it is, that if black people want the same thing as white people, it's like you have to give up your blackness to do these things that they consider white, when really it's what we, the people of, we Americans pretty much want the same thing. We want nice neighborhoods, a nice house, a place to send our kids to school, a place to grow old with our spouse, that sort of thing. That's just normal American life. But within that sort of bitter Marxist left, that means you lose your blackness if you join that.
Yeah, and that's absolutely yet another tactic that these people use. It's very strange because, as we point out in the film, that only happens with black Americans, with Americans who are born, with black people who are born here in America. Whenever somebody from, say, Nigeria or Haiti even come here, they come with an agenda to make something of themselves, to seize opportunities, to be productive. And you don't see this thing going on where people, you know, within their own so-called ethnic group are trying to discourage them by saying, oh, that's not what Nigerians do. No, they very much so want to be Americans, and they determine to do that, and they resolve to do that. Meanwhile, there's this thing that goes on in so-called black culture here in the United States where it's very much a crabs in a barrel type situation. And this goes as far back as, I would say, the 1920s. That's at least what my research finds, where you had the NAACP doing that exact same thing, where they were besmirching, successful black businessmen as Babbitts and Sellouts because they were moving into these suburban neighborhoods and putting their children in nice schools. They very much insisted on keeping these black families held back, almost in a kind of barbaric sense.
Well, it's trading one oppressive force for another, right? You lift the cap of slavery, and then somebody else wants to control you. The other thing I don't understand, people that talk about inclusion, inclusivity, diversity, they decry any black figure who moves amongst the groups effortlessly. So like a Dr. Ben Carson or an Alan West or a Dr. Carol Swain, these are all people that when they enter a room, they're applauded by everyone. And yes, white people, but for some reason that upsets the left.
And that's kind of the dilemma of so-called black leaders. And, a lot of people are going to be shocked when they watch Uncle Tom 2, because in our film, there's no sacred cow. We talk about the civil rights movement in an objective way. We talk about Martin Luther King even in an objective way. And we examine to what extent were these individuals and was this movement used to secure power for socialist demagogues in politics, to guarantee the so-called black vote for the Democrat Party. People don't want to talk about the fact that Martin Luther King ushered in black people into the Democrat Party with a lot of the things that he did. We only remember him for the I Have a Dream speech, which wasn't even written by him, by the way. Much of it was plagiarized by Archibald Carey Jr., and much of it was written by both Stanley Levison and Bayard Rustin, both of whom were communists. And so this isn't some kind of red scare. This is the hard facts that we have to be open and honest about if we are going to move forward in our country.
I'm going to run out of time in this segment, but I always question when somebody, I don't care if it's a feminist leader or a gay rights leader or whoever it is, when I notice that what they're saying to the people they're organizing is, oh, I will help set you free, but you have to follow me. It's not that I'm doing this for you so you can be seen as equal or have a better life or have opportunity. I'm going to take whatever's oppressing you in life, I'm going to take that away, but now I'm going to oppress you. So the feminists don't like women who, still go off and get married and maybe stay home, right? They didn't say you should be free to go off to college or the workspace or get married and stay home. They said you will do what we say. So they uplift one oppressive force and impose another one. And you see that in all sorts of communities. I got about 30 seconds.
No, that's why you should always be wary of anybody who professes to be your leader. I don't vote for politicians who desperately want to be in power. People who were not recruited by the people because the people saw something special in them. So if you learn nothing else from this movie, learn not to put man on a pedestal, but to really examine what it means to preserve our republic.